You have been in a season of transition and you are tired. You're tired in a way that's hard to explain and that's difficult for a lot of other people to really understand. But you've still been trying to show up. You've still been trying to do what you believe God has told you to do. You're trying to be faithful. But inside, there are moments where you just sit there and you think, how much longer is this going to take? When is this going to be over, God? If you're anything like me, you're asking God to just please get me out of here. Okay, I'm ready to go because you're just exhausted, right? But you have been trying. You have been trying to stay patient, but you can feel yourself getting worn down. You're trying to make sure you don't miss anything. You're trying to tie up loose ends. You want to be ready for what's next because deep down you feel that something has shifted. You know that even though things haven't necessarily changed on the outside, what's changed on the inside means that you can't stay where you are. And I just want to let you know that you are not behind. You are not forgotten. You are standing much closer to the end of your transition than you realize. And God has sent a word through me to speak to the situation. We're going to be coming out of the book of Joshua. Because before the children of Israel crossed over the Jordan River into the promised land, God gave them some very specific instructions. He gave them strategy for this promised land. And so this is not just biblical history. There's a word here from the Lord that is here to give you strategy for where you are right now. So if you believe that applies to you, then I need you to keep watching. Who is that girl I see staring straight back at me? Hey, beautiful souls. I'm Kai, and welcome to Reflections with Kai. This is a space where we reflect, heal, and grow into who God says we are. So, if you've been feeling stuck, unseen, or unsure of your identity, then you are in the right place. And today, I have a word from the Lord for many of us who have been in a season of transition, and now we are reaching the end of that season. We are about to cross into the promised land, the land that God has given us. And for some of us, this may mean actual land, but for many of us, this land is a metaphorical, it is symbolic. And so we're going to be coming out of several chapters in the book of Joshua. A while ago, the Lord had me reading these chapters because of my own season of transition that I'm currently in. I had so many questions for him, and I've been feeling myself really getting worn down. And I'm like, Lord, when is this going to be over? Like, what do I need to do next? Like, I just want to make sure I've done everything that you wanted me to do for this time because I'm ready for the next. And so he took me to Joshua chapters 2 through 6. And so today we're going to talk about chapters 2 through 4. This is going to be part one, and then there's going to be a part two video. Okay. So I don't want to prolong the time. I want to get straight into it because for many of us, we've been asking God questions. We need clarity, we need direction, we need strategy. And the Lord is sending me here to help us out today. So let's get started. Okay. Before you cross, you need to understand what is the promised land that God is bringing you into. Okay. This is the first thing that I want you to ask the Lord. God, what is the land that you're bringing me into? Okay. Because at the end of the book of Joshua, chapter 2, there were spies that were sent back to tell Joshua what they saw when they went to survey the land, when they went to survey Jericho, right? And because of what they saw and because of what they heard, they came back and they told Joshua, the Lord has surely given the land into our hands, right? And that the people of the land are scared, baby. They are shaking in their boots because of us, because of what the Lord has done for us. So this is a report that comes right before Israel begins preparing to cross the river, which is what was standing in between them and the promised land, the Jordan River. So again, it's time to really ask God, okay, I know that you've been talking to me about all these different types of blessings and things like that, but what exactly is the land that you're bringing me into? You need to understand what does your promised land mean for you? Because I think when we hear language like promised land, especially in Christian spaces, our minds immediately go to all of the good stuff, the milk and honey, the houses, the money, the cars, the marriage, the careers, the business, whatever it is that you've been waiting for, that you've been dreaming of. And those things may very well be a part of what God is doing in your life, but that's not really what it fully means when we talk about the promised land. Here, we're talking about purpose and destiny. These are the things that God is not only trying to give to you, but what He has been developing you for. The places He's calling you to occupy, whatever He's getting ready to entrust you to steward. So before you just get excited about, oh my gosh, I'm finally coming out the wilderness. I'm finally about to get this, that, and the other. I want you to really begin seeking the Lord about what exactly He's bringing you into and what He is going to expect from you there. What kind of responsibility comes with your promised land? Who do you need to become in order to steward it well? So, a change in your circumstances does not automatically tell you what God intends to do with those circumstances, right? So, many of us, we're about to enter into unfamiliar territory. We're about to enter into something new. And we love talking about how God is doing a new thing, right? But that means that it requires us to really seek God about how to steward this newness. How are we to respond in wisdom, right? So again, your promised land, it may be a new career, it may be a business or a ministry, it may be marriage or having children, being in some sort of leadership position, having more finances or increased influence, whatever it is. These things are blessings, but you need to understand that this is not just about blessings, this is about assignment. For example, your new career, your new job can be a blessing, while at the same time, there's something that God wants to develop through you or accomplish through you at that job. And so, the reason why it's so important for us to take the time to do this before we enter into those promised things is because sometimes we put our own expectations on God. We decide what we think He's about to do and what this next season is supposed to look like. And then when it doesn't look like that, now we're disappointed. But then it's like, did God actually say that though? Or did you say that? And I don't want us entering into this major shift in our lives, get into this promised land, and we're committed to an expectation that God never gave us. So now we're disappointed, and we didn't have to be. So now is not the time to make assumptions about what you think is going to happen on the other side of your transition. Now is the time to really seek the Lord's face and let Him tell you what He's bringing you into and prepare your expectations for the promised land. So again, you have to ask God, what is the land that you're bringing me into? What are you entrusting me with? Instead of being so hyper focused on what it is that you're about to receive. We're going to move on to Joshua chapter 3. And now, mind you, I'm giving very brief context. I am not reading the verses word for word. I highly, highly, highly encourage you to go back and read these chapters. They are not long. You must understand the context of what I'm speaking to. And as you read, the Lord will reveal to you even more than what I'm saying. Okay. So we're moving on to Joshua chapter 3. And we're going to talk about verses 3 through 4 because as I was reading these particular verses, there were certain things that stood out to me. There were certain things that the Lord highlighted to me and began to speak to. So here, the officers instruct Israel that when they see the Ark of the Covenant being carried by the Levitical priests, they're to move out and follow it. They're also told to keep a certain distance from it. And the reason for following is so that they will know which way to go because they've never traveled this way before. And the ark, which represents God's presence, God's covenant, this is central throughout this entire story, right? So this next part is extremely important to me because the people are told to follow the ark so they will know which way to go. Why? Because you've never been this way before. Again, you are entering into your promised land. You're entering into things that they may kind of seem familiar, right? If God is placing you into a new career, you know what it's like to have a job. Having a job isn't something new, right? But you've never been in a job like this. You've never been called to work like this, right? Some of you, you may be entering into marriage or ministry or whatever it is. Whatever it is, God is saying this is new. You've never been this way before. And I really want you to think about that as it pertains to whatever God is bringing you into. You may not have ever had this much responsibility before. You may not have ever had this level of financial resources before, right? You may have experienced running a business, but maybe you've never run a business at this level before. And so whatever your promised land is, you haven't been there before. You may be experienced. You may be extremely intelligent. You may have learned a whole lot in your wilderness season, but you still never been here before. So this is not the time to decide, okay, God, thanks for getting me here. I got it. I got it now. You know, all that stuff I learned in the wilderness, I'm taking it from here. No. If anything, your dependence on God needs to increase in the promised land. And so here we are seeing the connection between following God's presence with the unfamiliarity of the route. So we have to be really careful not to rush ahead of God just because we're excited to finally move. We're excited to finally be out of our wilderness. We're finally starting to see abundance and growth. And so we jump ahead of God. Because, baby, if you've been in a wilderness season for a long time, I mean, you're ready to go, okay? You're like, thank you, Jesus. Finally, let's get out of here. But there's a difference between moving quickly because God is telling you to move quickly and running ahead of Him because you're tired of waiting. So God is saying, follow my presence. Let me lead you. Don't get ahead of me, okay? So this is something that has become really important to me in the course of developing this message. You cannot assume that the strategies that you use to survive in the wilderness are going to work in your promised land. Okay? The larger narrative of the text here in the book of Joshua will show Israel encountering different circumstances that required a continued specific dependence on God's instructions. Okay. So again, there may be things that you've learned to do because you were surviving. So the you trying to survive affected the way that you handled your money because you didn't have a lot of it. It may have influenced the way that you learn to protect yourself relationally, like from people, because of what you were experiencing from people. It may have influenced the ways that you approach conflict and leadership and even your emotions and even opportunities because of the environment you were in. And some of those things may have made sense then for the wilderness, but that doesn't automatically mean they're going to make sense with where you're going. So you're going to be in a new place with new responsibilities, and you may have to do things that you've never done before. That means you're going to need God to teach you how to function when you get there. You've never been this way before. Okay. So you have to allow God to show you the way. Don't expect that you're already going to know everything that you're supposed to do when you get there. In Joshua chapter 3, verse 5, Joshua tells the people, consecrate yourselves, for tomorrow the Lord will do amazing things among you. And so here, Israel is given a direct instructions that they need to prepare themselves in consecration before they cross the Jordan River. Because again, once they get to the other side of that Jordan River, they are going to be in their promised land. And so while I was reading this, the phrase that really stood out to me was prepare for God's great wonders. You know, Joshua says to consecrate yourself. Consecrate yourself. And I don't mean, prepare yourself by getting hyped up about what God is going to do, which you should be excited. I mean, now it's time to go to God and ask Him, is there anything in me that you need to deal with before I get into this new season? Is there anything in me that I still haven't surrendered to God? I still haven't corrected it. Are there still people that I have not forgiven? Are there still areas within my soul that need to be healed? Are there still things that I need to repent of? And are there still things that I need to do to make sure that I'm in alignment with your will for my life, God? So this is an invitation to prayer. Whatever consecration is supposed to look like from you, you have to go and you have to get those direct instructions from the Lord. I can't sit up here and tell you specifically, oh, you need to go pray and fast for 7 days, or you need to stop eating meat for a month, or all these different things. I don't know what consecration is going to look like for you. God knows, okay? But again, some of those things, it may very well include God is calling you to repentance. And repentance doesn't just mean, God, I'm sorry, please forgive me. It means a change in action, a change in behavior, a change in your mindset towards things, a change in the way you believe certain things to be true or not. God could be calling you to forgive someone or even forgive yourself. Maybe you still have compromise in your life. That if he allowed you to go into the promised land with that compromise now, it would destroy you. Maybe there are some instructions he's giving you that you still haven't followed yet. They've been delayed. Maybe you really do need to fast. Okay. Whatever it is, again, ask God. Don't copy somebody else's consecration. Consecration is not a transaction, also, by the way. It's not you saying, okay, because I do this, then God is going to do that. No, 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 no. Because God has already declared what he wanted to do. Okay. This consecration, this obedience to his instructions, it's just preparing you to receive what God already decided that he wanted to do for you. And so I don't want you to hear this as, oh, well, if I consecrate hard enough, that God is finally going to get me out of here. Like I'm finally going to get what I want. No, because that's transactional. This is about preparation. Because again, well, let me just say this in part 2, because there's more to this. Once they cross the Jordan, God is going to deal with them about some specific things. And the consecration that they did before, they are going to still have to maintain. Okay. So consecration is not just let me get myself together so I can get in. All right. It's how you are going to remain faithful once you actually get to the promised land. We're going to finish up Joshua chapter 3, and then we're going to move into Joshua chapter 4 as well. Now, this is the meat and the potatoes of this thing. Okay. Because in Joshua chapter 3, they make it to the Jordan River and they're getting ready to cross. And it basically says that the Jordan River is overflowing. Okay. During this time, it is considered the harvest season. And the river is just I mean, I don't want to say bulging with water, but the river is overflowing with water. Okay. It's more full than it normally would be. And now, this is a detail that I don't want us to forget. All right. Because just because you are standing and looking at flood waters does not mean that you are not in your harvest season. Okay. And I need you to follow me, follow me, follow me. It was harvest season and the river was overflowing. And they're like, we got to cross this river. We ain't got no boats. We don't have nothing. Okay. So there are some of you, they're in a place right now where you are looking at your current circumstances like, okay, God, you said things are changing. You said my season was shifting. You said, this was it. You told me to prepare. So why does it look like things are getting worse? I thought you said this was almost over. Why does it seem like it's getting worse? Okay, what are we doing? So maybe the obstacles of what you think are obstacles in front of you, they look bigger. Or the path that you're on, it looks impossible. Nothing about what you're seeing. This is basically what I'm getting at. Nothing about what you're seeing matches what you thought this season was supposed to look like. And that's why this part hit me so hard. You could be standing in your harvest season, but looking at flood waters. This was going to be a very difficult thing. Okay. But the difficulty of Israel's circumstances in this passage, it did not mean that God's promise had become null and void. It did not mean that God's presence had disappeared. So difficulty alone is not evidence that you misheard God. It's not evidence of that. But your circumstances, you can't ignore them, right? You can't treat them like they're nothing. So I'm not telling you to ignore your reality. I'm not trying to tell you to act like your circumstances don't matter. I'm just saying that just because it's hard, it doesn't tell you whether or not God is with you. So if you know what God said, don't let the flood stage, don't let the circumstances around you getting perceivably worse make you forget what season God said you're in, because what God said is the truth. Okay. Now, to add on to that, now it's time for them to actually cross the river. And God gives Joshua some specific instructions for them to do that. And so the priests are instructed to carry the Ark of the Covenant and step into the Jordan River. Okay. And when they actually step into that river, then it says that the water stopped when the priest's feet reached the edge of the water. And it was when they moved in response to God's specific instruction. Now, this right here is where I think some of us may be stuck. We know what God showed us. We know what he told us. But now we are standing in front of our Jordan River saying, God, I know you told me this. I know you showed me this, but how in the world is this supposed to happen? How? You've reached a block or a wall and you're standing there and you're like, I need something to change. But you're standing there waiting for something to change so you can finally feel comfortable moving. But that's not how this works. The Jordan River didn't move first. The priest's feet had to touch the water, and then the water stopped. I just need that to marinate. I just need that to marinate. Okay. They could have stood at the Jordan River like, okay, God, what? You told me to cross, but how am I supposed to cross all this water? But he said, step into it. And then the water began to stop upstream and began to continue downstream. And the riverbed literally dried up for them to cross over on dry land. So here's what the Lord is saying. Some of us were waiting to see something move that may not move until you respond in obedience to an instruction that God has already given to you. Some of us are saying, well, God said I'll get the job, but I'll apply when this happens. I'll start that when this happens. I'll build this when that happens. I'll leave after this happens. I'll say yes when this. I'll only obey when I understand how all of this is supposed to work, is basically what you're saying. But we can't wait for everything to make sense before we obey God. Okay. But I need you to understand what I'm not saying. I'm not telling you to go take some random leap of faith doing something crazy because Kai said in her video, you got to put your feet in the water. Don't do that. Don't do that. Because the priests, they were not making up their own plan and hoping that God would work it out. God told them specific instructions to follow, and that's what they did. Okay, that's the difference. So the question isn't whether you're brave enough to do something risky and take a leap of faith. The question is, what did God actually tell you to do? And did you do it? Okay? Because if you know what he said, you don't have to know how the Jordan River is going to move. You just need to know whether God told you to take that step. And you just have to take that step. Now, Joshua chapter 3, verse 16 says that the waters coming downstream, they stopped and they piled up at a distance at a certain location. And then the waters that were flowing down towards the Dead Sea were cut off, and Israel was able to cross. Now, I just want to just do a brief emphasis on this because it stood out to me as I was reading. And I believe the Lord was using this as further encouragement. How these waters were stopped upstream. Now, the very obstacles that are giving you anxiety and worry and that you're afraid of and that you're trying to figure out how am I supposed to get past this, God may already be addressing those obstacles somewhere upstream out of your view that you have no clue of. Okay. And that encouraged me. That encouraged me because I don't want you hearing everything that I just said and now thinking, okay, so this is all on me. I have to make the right move at the right time and somehow make all of this happen. No, they had to obey God, but God had to move the water. And again, that water was stopped upstream. Oh, Lord, I'm trying to make sure I can say this real good the way I want to say this. The water was stopped upstream in a location that was not immediately visible to them. And whatever happened upstream was what allowed that water to get out of the way so that they could cross over. So you may not be able to see where God is handling those things that are preventing your passage, but He's doing it. You don't know what conversations are happening. You don't know what rooms your name is being brought up in. You don't know whose heart or whose mind God may be turning to favor you. You don't know what resources God is positioning for you. You don't know what opportunities are about to be presented to you. They're already in motion. You think it's connected to something that you have to do, but they're already in motion. You may be standing in these circumstances in your life thinking nothing is happening, and maybe nothing you can see is happening, but that doesn't mean that nothing is happening, because God could be very well working for you upstream. So your job is not to control what is happening upstream. Your job is just to obey God's instructions wherever you're standing. Joshua chapter 4 now. Joshua chapter 4, I really want to talk about verses 15 through 18. And it says that after the priest carrying the ark came up out of the Jordan, the river returned to its place and overflowed its banks as before. Now, the Lord highlighted this to me, had to, because it really stood out to me and I didn't really understand why. And when I thought about how all of that miraculous doing just happened for them to cross that river, only for it to just go right back to its same state, like nothing happened, the Lord began to speak to me and said something along the lines of special exception, favor just for you. Special exception, favor just for you. Now, this is not for anybody to be entitled, but it is just so that we can have confidence in the fact that God can and will create a way out of no way, specifically for his purposes. Okay? It may look like ordinary circumstances are not going to allow it to happen, but then God will make it happen. So, again, I'm not saying that, we're Christians, so everybody has to break the rules for us, but God will break the rules for us. God will break the rules for us, you know. But what I'm saying is that you cannot look at the ordinary pathway. You cannot look at, well, normally things are supposed to go A, B, C, D when God is trying to take you from A to Z. You know, you cannot look at the way things ordinarily work and then think like, oh, because I don't see it working this way, then it's not going to happen. And then you decide that God can't get you to where he already told you that he's taking you. No. So maybe you don't have the background that somebody normally has to have to qualify for this position. Maybe somebody unexpected opens the door for you to get the position anyway. Okay? This could be some unusual things happening. Some unusual spontaneous opportunities happening. Housing situations, relocations, finances, some type of access that maybe you didn't see before. And it may make you look at it and say, I could have never saw that happening. I could have never saw that coming. Or it could have other people looking at you like, wait a minute, how did you get that? Why did they let you in? How did you get that position? Why did they give you that? And again, it's just God's favor because he has a specific purpose for you. So he'll do whatever he sees fit to do to make sure that you are able to fulfill that purpose. So some of those things that happen, it may be one-off situations. Just like this Jordan River, like some pathways, they don't need to stay open forever. They just need to be open long enough for you to obey God and cross over. That's all. And there's a connection between what happened here at the Jordan River and what happened at the Red Sea. Joshua chapter 4, verse 23, it like specifically compares the drying of the Jordan River with God's drying of the Red Sea when he was delivering the children of Israel out of Egypt. This is super important. I'm so glad that Joshua made this connection because he's basically saying that the same way God dried up that Red Sea is the same way he dried up the Jordan. And I love that because the Red Sea was at the beginning of the journey. That's how he brought them out. And now the Jordan is at the end of the journey. That's how he's bringing them in. What he promised them when he was bringing them out. I hope y'all caught that. Because sometimes I think we get so consumed with whatever today's obstacles are, today's issues, today's worries are, that we start acting like we don't have a history with God. Like we don't know what his track record is. Like he ain't never done anything for us before. And so we need to stop and ask ourselves, what has God already brought me through that at that time it looked impossible? But now I'm on the other side of it and I realize it wasn't impossible for my God. What was I crying about 5, 10 years ago that now I'm living on the other side of and I have joy? I can look back at it and I no longer shed those tears. Where has God provided for me and made a way for me and carried me through something and answered a prayer? And I genuinely didn't know how he was going to answer it, but he did it anyway. Because the same God that made a way when you started this journey is still the same God that is making a way as you end this journey. So don't look at this Jordan River, these circumstances that you're in. Don't look at these circumstances like you ain't never seen God move before. Okay? There is something very, very important that I believe the Lord wants me to address because there needs to be some correction that takes place. I think that sometimes when we talk about the promised land, we make it sound like, okay, when I get there, let me put my feet up. Like I'm hanging my coat, I'm hanging my hat, I'm not doing nothing else. And like, no, that's not what's gonna happen here. Okay. You are crossing over into the things that God promised you, but you're also crossing over into stewardship and responsibility. Okay. And some people don't like how that sounds, but I just want to draw a little more attention to Joshua chapter 4, verses 12 through 14. So here, now they've made it to the other side of the Jordan River. They're in the land that God promised to them. And there are armed men from the tribes of Reuben, Gad, and the half tribe Manasseh. They crossed the Jordan ahead of the other Israelites. They already received their territory. You got to read more, back for that or whatever. They already had their territory, but they were obligated to help the other tribes take possession of their inheritance, right? But they crossed this river already armed for battle. I I need you to sit with that. They crossed the river already armed for battle. There were about 40,000 of them prepared for battle. So, entering into your promised land does not mean you get a permanent vacation. And I'm not saying this to discourage you. I'm just saying that you are stepping into destiny. There's a calling on your life. There are things that God is entrusting to you that you're going to have to actually steward. So if you pray for a business and God gives you one, now you have to run it. If he's bringing you into leadership, now you have to actually lead people. He's giving you money, now you have to actually manage that money. You're getting married. Baby, there's a lot that comes with that marriage. Okay? God has given you a platform and said he's giving you influence. I mean, yeah, people are gonna have to, they're gonna listen to what you say, but there's things that come with that. There's responsibility attached to all of it. And so I don't want you to interpret the ongoing responsibility as evidence that nothing has changed. Now, something that's very, very important that I believe the Lord highlighted to me that I want to emphasize. There are some of you who God is bringing into leadership positions. This could be at work, career, ministry, whatever. He's bringing you into leadership positions. You have experience with leadership. You've had to manage people before, and whatever that looked like. And God is saying, but this time it's not going to be like all the other times. Yes, he's giving you influence, he's giving you responsibility, he's allowing you to lead at a larger level, but he's saying that this time is not going to be like all the other times. Okay, now stay with me. Stay with me now, because I already know somebody's listening to this and they're like, Lord, what is it? So it's never going to stop? It's never going to stop? Because I did all of that, just get over here, and now you're telling me there's more responsibility, more things I have to do, more ways I have to be uncomfortable. Listen, this time is not going to be like all the other times. The fact that there's responsibility in the land does not mean you won't be able to handle it. Your season has changed, and guess what? You've changed with your season. Before, you were wandering around in the wilderness trying to survive. But now you're going to be standing on the ground that God promised you. You're going to be responsible for cultivating that land that you've been established in. And I think that this is something that's really important, because if you look at the comparison between Moses's leadership and Joshua's leadership, for those of you who God is calling you into leadership and you're like, but I'm tired of these folks. I'm burnt out. especially by the people of God. I don't want to deal with this anymore. Moses, baby, Moses had to lead a rebellious people. Okay. He, he even at one point had to intercede on their behalf to keep God from just wiping them out because of how ridiculous they were. Okay. Moses, I think above anybody, understands what it's like to have to manage and lead difficult, rebellious people. This is why the Lord is saying this time it will be different. It's not going to be like that. Am I saying that the people are going to be perfect? No. Am I saying that nobody's ever going to challenge you again? No. But there was a difference when Moses was leading those rebellious people versus Joshua leading people that were willing to follow. Joshua leading people that understood that they were called to his leadership. Okay? That's what it's going to be like for you in this promised land. I'm not saying that it's always going to be easy. I'm just saying it's going to be different. It's going to be different. So, yes, there's still something for you to do, but you're doing it from a different place now. You're not just fighting from survival anymore. You are fighting from promise. Now, in Joshua chapter 4, verse 14, it says that the Lord exalted Joshua in all the sight of Israel. Now, this made me think of Joshua chapter 1. And again, we're talking about this leadership thing still. And not just leadership, but just how certain circumstances they're just going to be different in the promised land. It's going to be different. So for those of you who are like, oh, I'm already tired, I'm already burnt out, I can't take more of this, it's going to be different. In Joshua chapter 1, God called Joshua. He gave him instructions. And what's interesting is that Joshua goes back to the people. Joshua goes back to the people and they confirm what the Lord has said without knowing that God said it. So there's some of you who God has called you to lead in some sort of capacity. You spent a long time hidden, a long time overlooked, supporting other people and being developed behind the scenes. And you've known that, I am called to more, right? But maybe you've experienced a lot of rejection, a lot of pushback, a lot of people, gossiping about you or slandering you or minimizing you, dismissing you, whatever the case is. You're called to lead. You know that God is establishing you. And I just want to let you know that you don't have to go and run and say, like Joshua, he didn't have to go and say, I'm Moses now. I'm in charge now. You better respect me. No, God knew how to establish him. And I really want somebody to hear that. God knows how to confirm you. God knows how to confirm you. Okay? God knows how to confirm you. I'm just saying that because I want you to believe it. Again, Moses had a very difficult experience leading those people. And even though Joshua's generation was not perfect, because they weren't, keep reading the book of Joshua. What the Lord is highlighting was that, you know, the people that you are going to encounter, the people that you're going to lead in this next season, they're not going to resist you in the way that people have in the previous seasons. I'm not saying everybody's going to like you and agree with every decision that you make, but I'm just saying that constant fight, feeling like people are always undermining you, that they just refuse to cooperate with you, that they're just resisting you simply because it's you. That's it. Just because it's you. Now, for some of you, like God is putting you in environments where people actually recognize the grace that's on your life and they're able to receive from you. They'll cooperate with you. They'll move with you. So again, going back, it's a new environment. It's new. It's new. It's new. Don't bring those wilderness strategies that you used to survive into the new promised land. Don't treat these new people the way you felt like you had to treat the old people because it's new. It's different. It's different. So let him, God is going to change your environment, but you can still walk in there expecting everybody to treat you like the people in the old environment did. You have to allow God to start changing your expectations of what it's going to be like when you walk into everything that he's promised you. This time is not going to be like all the other times. Let's talk about Joshua chapter 4 a little bit more. Now there's certain things that happen here that I just want to touch on that are amazing, that I believe the Lord is speaking to us through. And here, God commands Israel to take 12 stones from the Jordan River, representing each tribe of Israel, and establish them as a memorial because he wanted future children to look at those stones and stop and ask their parents what they meant. And so Joshua chapter 4 verse 24, it gives those reasons why, that all the peoples of the earth would know the Lord's powerful hand and that Israel will always fear the Lord. Now, I really need y'all to follow me here because this blessed me. This blessed me. Okay. They take these stones out of the river and they build a memorial because they're supposed to tell the story of what God brought them through. This is really, really important because some of you have wanted to be out of your wilderness so bad that when God finally gets you out, you're probably going to be like, thank you, Jesus. I don't ever want to talk about that again. I don't ever want to think about that again. And I understand that. Okay. I understand that. But remembering doesn't mean that you have to be still attached to the pain or keep living emotionally in that season that God brought you out of. But what you don't want to forget is who God was to you while you were there. It's time to start reflecting. It's time to start building a memorial before the Lord. What was it that, well, what is it? What is it, present tense, that God has developed in you from this wilderness season? What did you learn about God? What did you learn about yourself? What did he bring you through? How did he provide for you? What do you know now that you couldn't have known before this wilderness season? Because sometimes our abundance can create amnesia. This memorial, it protects Israel's memory of God's action in their lives. It's so that, you know, we don't get too comfortable with our blessings and we start thinking that they're just normal and there's nothing extraordinary about them. We have to be intentional about remembering how we got there. And I really mean that. You can pray and cry and beg God for something for years. And then when you live in it long enough, you forget you ever prayed for it. You forget how you felt when you first got it. That job you were crying over, it might end up being a job that now you're irritated on. You're crying that you have to go there on Monday morning, right? The house that you prayed for is now the house that you tired of cleaning. You're like, what? I ain't know this house came with all this. Like, this is ridiculous. But back in my apartment, I ain't have to worry about that. That's life, that's life. I'm not saying you're not allowed to be annoyed by anything that God gives you, but I don't want you to be so accustomed to your answered prayer that you forget that it was an answered prayer. You have to remember the miracle before you become accustomed to the blessing. So journal it. Write down the dates of things that happened. Go back. Look over those pictures, over those prayers, over those voice notes. Keep those testimonies documented. Tell your children, tell the people that are around you what God has been doing for you in this season. Whatever helps you generally remember what God did. You have to testify. You have to remember. And your testimony has three audiences, just like in this text in Joshua 4. God explains what the memorial significance is because he's expecting future generations to ask about it. And that would lead to causing the whole people of the earth, all the peoples of the earth, to know God's power. So there are three audiences here. You need to remember, your children, the future generations need to remember, and the nations of the earth need to remember. When they look at your life, it needs to be a memorial. And this was so beautiful for me. Remember what God did, because the generations coming after you are supposed to hear the story. The peoples of the earth, they're supposed to be able to look at your life and know the story of what God did. Your testimony is not just private encouragement for you. So some of what God has brought you through is supposed to become of the spiritual inheritance that you pass down to your children, whether they're your physical children or your spiritual children. Somebody else's faith may be strengthened because you are willing to tell God, you are willing to tell the truth about what God did for you. You are willing to tell people what God did for you. Your testimony is something that God is also entrusting you to steward. He's also instructing you to steward. And I need you to remember that the God who delivered you out of all those things, he has not forgotten where he was delivering you to. He didn't deliver the children out of out of Egypt just to leave them in the wilderness. He already knew from the beginning, before the tribes were even fully developed back with Abraham. He already was telling Abraham, this is the land that I will give for you and your inheritance for the generations that will come through you. God has never been confused about what he's spoken over your life. He's been working things out this whole time just for you to get there. So now we're coming to the end here. I just want to emphasize Joshua chapter 4, verse 24. Here, Joshua is expressing that all these things happen so that the people of the earth would know the hand of the Lord is powerful, and so that Israel might always fear the Lord their God. So let's talk about this part. This is where all of it has to land. And God is telling us why he did this. So when the prayers are answered, when you get into the promises, you're finally starting to see what God has been doing in you the whole time. Give God the glory. Do not get to the other side and then start to rewrite your testimony. Give God the glory. Do not become embarrassed about the wilderness once you're successful, or tell the story later like you knew it all along. You were just so smart and strategic and disciplined that you figured the whole thing out by yourself. No, baby. You couldn't part that Jordan River. You didn't do that. Tell the truth about where you were. Tell the truth about what you didn't know. Tell the truth about what you were scared of and where God had to carry you, where he had to provide for you and make a way for you that you could not make for yourself. Because this journey was not designed for people to be impressed with you. It was designed to leave evidence of God's glory in your life. Give God the glory. Because your story had to happen this way. It was all a part of the plan. Nothing that you went through will be wasted. It was all a part of the plan. Give God the glory. So we're going to stop here because this is only part 1, and I need you to come back for part 2 because, yes, we have talked about crossing the Jordan River, but that was not the end of the story. Now, they made it to the promised land. They're in the land. But guess what? They have to seize and occupy the land. And their first battle is the city of Jericho, highly fortified, huge walls that are very hard to get through. But before they have to fight that battle, God begins dealing with them. A lot of things happen. Okay, a lot of things happen. And I think that this is important for us to talk about for where many of you are going. It's one thing to ask, how do I get to what God has promised me? But it's another thing to ask, now that I'm in the promises, how do I actually live here? How do I maintain these promises? How do I steward it? How do I do this? So that's what we're getting into in part 2. And I really hope that you'll come back. Now, all right. Thank you so much for reflecting with me today. This has been a lot, but I hope that you were able to gain something from it, glean something from it that the Lord was speaking to you. Go ahead and read Joshua chapter 2-4. Until next time, I want you to keep reflecting, keep healing, keep growing, and remember that God's image looks good on you.